Welcome again to another episode of WisdomNet TV. Today we're continuing on one of our themes of applying the understanding behind WisdomNet and the human experience to health most broadly defined, including physical health as well as emotional and psychological health. And for that we'll have a conversation with Scott Kelly, who is a three-principle practitioner with many years' experience as a coach, mentor, and integrative health practitioner, assisting individuals connect to their innate health and well-being, improving performance, and living with clarity. And Scott has had a very broad background, training, educational, and in terms of who he works with, it's been a big gamut of professional athletes, Olympians, couples, families, teams, and corporations, as well as individuals. And I had a chance last summer to speak with Scott a bit about his work, and I was inspired. It's pretty special in my experience to have somebody working in this broad range of the human experience, from consciousness all the way down to the physical body, and it provides fascinating opportunities. So with that, I'd like to say hello and welcome Scott.
Thank you very much, David. It's a pleasure hanging out with you. Thank you.
Totally. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah. So my intention today is to really sort of dive in, explore together these topics of how we create our experience. I think it's fine to assume that the viewers have been exposed somewhat to the three principles, and if you are new to that, just kind of it's the kind of thing you kind of absorb as you listen to it anyway. And so really, I guess what I'm most interested in is how you see health. Maybe it's a good place to start. What is health, and what's the source of our health, and what's the relationship between sort of the psychological and physical health?
Yeah.
And let's just start with that.
So a small question to start.
I know. What the heck? Yeah, a small question. Exactly.
Yeah.
And by the way, I will say that we're all exploring here. Like, none of us are claiming to have the ultimate answers.
Yeah.
But what we've seen so far seems to be can be very helpful.
Yeah.
Okay.
So David, yeah, I appreciate the question, because I think, for me, it's really been kind of one that has evolved over the years. And I can tell you that I'll kind of take you on a little bit of a process of kind of where I'm landed now and how I see things. But it really started probably over 25 years ago, when I started to get intrigued with health and well-being and physical health and performance. Growing up as an athlete and really active, I started to get really curious about how I could perform better. And even at a very young age, I actually was really, I think, lucky to be pointed in a direction of how our mind played a role in that. But even so much of my attention and so much of our attention, I think, was really around, how do you train? What does training look like? What does eating look like? What does skill development look like? And so much of health and performance was really focused on that physical aspect of things. And to the degree that as I went on to study in college, my focus again was really kind of on that physical dimension, really looking at how, when people are injured, how do you help them heal? My interest was in the physical body and orthopedics and joints and things like that. So I started to get really, really interested in sports orthopedic rehab, helping people rehab their joints, their backs, their knees, their hips, their necks, those kinds of things, and get them back into play. And as my career continued to evolve, what I started to find was that some people did really, really well in physical therapy and rehab and sport and training and conditioning and getting back to play, and others didn't. And it was a really kind of it really kind of bent my brain. It really kind of perplexed me. Like, why is it that some of these people who seemingly have the same sort of injury or same type of challenge going on, why do some do really well and some don't do really well? And it just kind of scratched at my brain over and over. And it was probably back in the late 90s when I started to get really curious about the role of nutrition in all of this. And so I started to dive into nutrition and explore, what does food have to do with health, well-being, healing, and performance? And as I started to dive into that realm, I started to realize that I had overlooked and perhaps even my professors at the university had overlooked a really powerful leverage point. And I started to realize that, man, nature is designed, and the food that nature provides is really designed for the replenishment, rejuvenation, and the rebuilding of the human body day to day. And so I started to take a really deep dive into that world and started to see that so much of where people get hung up in their own healing process really revolved around nutrition and what they were eating. And so much of my practice at that point began to shift. And it wasn't like I was neglecting the physical therapy and the sports therapy element. It was more that I just wanted to make sure that people had the right materials on board so that they could build and rebuild with good, strong, powerful material so that they could get back to play and get back to life. And I started to find that people healed much faster. And so much of my time then began helping people see the value of food and the importance of putting good food in the body, food that can help rebuild the system, help replenish the system, and help to decrease inflammation throughout the body. So as that kind of went along for years, I came to kind of the next jumping off point, which was starting to see that not everybody responded to food in the same way. You know, it was kind of like what I saw with the physical side of things. Not everybody did well in their physical therapy in the same way, and not everybody was responding to nutrition in the same way. And I got really curious about that. And you know, that's a whole nother topic in itself. But what it really kind of pointed me to was that there was a way in which there was something else deeper behind people's ability to adapt to the environment, people's ability to adopt new ways of eating and lifestyle. And I started to see more and more that was coming from the realm of state of mind. And that kind of launched me into that world of really exploring how state of mind really plays a role behind health, around well-being, around habits and change, and more importantly, transformation. And then I started to see the linkages between that, healing, health, performance, and I was just really kind of, and still am, just awestruck at how this understanding is behind everything. And that's so that's kind of where I am now, as far as kind of where you and I sit and where we've landed in this conversation, is that it's kind of been an evolution of looking at the body as this physical machine and treating it as this mechanical thing, and really starting to kind of understand more now that there are mechanical aspects, but there's really a ghost in the machine. And I'm so intrigued with putting the eye on the ghost in the machine rather than getting enamored with the mechanics of things. And that's kind of where I see health and well-being. that health and well-being are innately true for everybody. And it's more where we put our eye. Are we putting it on the mechanical dysfunctions of things, or are we putting it in a more powerful place, being that more kind of elusive, formless space of possibility and intelligence?
Yeah, and I understand why, because I think the way, based on your evolution and based on what we both know about these principles, like that's really, these principles are really the source. They're the beginning of the whole experience. This is where it starts.
Mhm.
And then the other things that show up in form, like in the body, on the mechanical level, that's more at the effect. That's more downstream. That's more the result. And so it's natural to me that you'd keep looking, like as you went, huh? So what's behind this? Why do some people heal, not so much? Okay, there's nutrition, and how come nutrition sometimes works, sometimes not? Okay, state of mind, and what affects that, and kind of keep looking for, really what's at cause.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's right. Yeah, and I'm glad you kind of see that, because it's really just been a natural evolution of
right.
not being attached to this idea that the body is this physical thing and that's it, and ignoring curiosity along the way. It's really been, I think, for me, this honoring of curiosity as it kind of bubbles up or comes up through me,
Yeah,
honoring curiosity and saying, oh, wait a second, is there something more that wants to reveal itself, that actually has even more capacity for having a truly rich human experience.
yeah, beautiful.
Yeah.
Um, and the attitude of curiosity, I like that you brought that up, because there's an openness to and a lightness to it, that attitude, and where we are open to the new, less attached to what we've seen so far. So that's really, I like that feeling. I kind of lightened up just when you said, curiosity,
Yeah.
because I'm really curious here.
Yeah. Yeah.
uh, yeah, yeah. Um, and the other note that I heard, which is inspiring to me, is this idea of possibilities.
Mhm.
Because what I've seen is the more we look towards the source, toward upstream to this place where we're closer to the realm of thinking and feeling and awareness, the more possibilities open up.
Yeah.
If we look at the effect, the possibilities can look very limited. If we just look at the body has a certain injury or something, it can, like, that mechanical level, we can get this sort of narrow focus that
Yeah.
limits us. So this idea of possibility, to me, it's like, okay, and there's so much more, and what could shift. And um, so I think that's my guess is it's that realm of more open possibilities is what's led to more powerful results for you in your practice. Would you agree with
Yeah,
that?
I
Yeah,
would agree with that. I think,
yeah,
it started with me looking in that direction and
yeah.
seeing, oh wow,
Mm,
at the end of the day, there really is nothing but possibility.
right.
Even though in the world of form, in this mechanical space that we're living in, there's still possibility in that too.
That's true. That's true. Every level.
Right, at every level, there's
Exactly.
nothing but
Right.
possibility.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the only thing that limits us from seeing that is uh, kind of the attachment to the ideas that we have around anything, and
Yeah.
with even just a little bit less attachment, with just a little bit
Yeah.
more curiosity about what else could also be true. uh, Allows us to see more for ourselves, but more in those in and around us. And as I brought that into my own personal world, it was very clear that this was not that this was a little bit of foreign territory for most of the people who were walking into my office. That, when they walked in with a physical or a health challenge, that it was less about possibility and more about, look where I am now. How can you help me deal with this? Can we make it different? Can we make it go away? How can what can we do? But rather than seeing that, man, there is so much in your possession in the realm of healing and shifting and change, that you don't have to rely on me. I'm going to point in a direction with you, and together we're going to see what's possible for you. And just by loosening up that thought process with people, it tends to allow them to see that whatever they've got going on, it isn't, it's not a curse, right? It's not a sentence. It's not a jail sentence. It's just what's currently going on. And as soon as that shift can begin in the brain, and we can allow ourselves openness to the fact of possibility, the fact of new thought, the fact of new, fresh thinking and insight, it can allow ourselves to see something new and possible within us that we couldn't see before, which allows and frees up healing.
Yeah, exactly. That makes total sense to me. Now that we're talking about your practice, are there any examples of people you worked with that come to mind for you right now that might illustrate the process and the possibility?
Yeah. I mean, I think there are several. I mean, one of the things, one that comes to mind, and I think it's so clear in my mind, is because it was one of the things that I saw as I started to look in this direction. I started to see that in this one particular client, they came in because they were really challenged with back pain, and it was very debilitating for them. They had a very fat file of all the things that they had tried, all the things that they'd done, the doctors and specialists that they had seen, and what I saw really clearly was that there is a way in which this individual was kind of toting their body around, looking for other people to take the pain away. And what became really clear was that they had kind of stopped looking in the direction of possibility. They had stopped looking in the direction of what's available to me that I can't see. What happens for people is that when we're bothered by discomfort and we're bothered by pain, it puts our awareness on it like nothing else, right? It really gets our attention, and it's designed to do that, right? And the challenge is that because of the way that our mind works and the busy aspect of our brain, oftentimes when we put our awareness on pain, our brain begins to get very, very busy. And it gets very, very busy with thought and what does this mean for me? What won't I be able to do? What is my future going to look like? So all of a sudden, we get inundated with thoughts of fear and worry and concern, and the idea of curiosity and possibility don't even occur to us. And as we can explore a little bit, as our conversation goes, what we start to find is that the busier the brain gets with thought that we start to engage and pay attention to, the more that engages our physiology, meaning that the chemistry in our body begins to shift and we begin to feel our thinking. Worry thoughts create worry feelings, and fearful thoughts create the experience, the physical experience of fear. And so with that comes tightening and tension in the musculature. And when you've got a muscle skeletal challenge going on, sometimes putting more tension in the system just creates more discomfort. And so working with this individual, we really began to look in this direction of what else is true? What else is truer than the experience you're having right now? What else is truer than the possibility that you're thinking for yourself, given the pain and experience that you're having? And as we started to explore and look at how the principles behind our experience are operating for us, and that there's an intelligence in the system, as we began to put our eye on that, more so than the discomfort that they were feeling, what happened was that they started to notice that their relationship with their discomfort began to change. Now, what I didn't say is I didn't say their pain went away. The relationship with their discomfort changed. And because their relationship with their discomfort changed, it opened up a whole new level of understanding for what they saw as possible for themselves. And once we begin to look in that direction, the physiology follows. The body became more relaxed, the body became more flexible, and all of a sudden, some of the pressure and the opportunity for physical and physiological healing was more capable of doing what it's designed to do. And so it was really what was missing in this fat file that this person had walked in was that they had never looked in this realm that is behind their physical experience. They'd always been looking at their physical experience of proof of who they are, what they're up to, and what they're capable of in the future. And because they were only looking in that direction, it really constricts what we see as possible for ourselves, which creates more worry and more fear. And all of a sudden, our mind goes crazy and starts to think, well, am I going to be able to get back to work? Am I going to be able to make a living? Am I going to be able to have romantic relations? Am I going to be able to have sex? Am I going to be able to do the things that I really enjoyed doing in life? And when we're kind of working from this worried state, the only ideas that generally occur to us are worried answers. And so we don't really gain any traction there, but we continue to kind of stir the pot. And ultimately, at some point, we have to decide, is this a helpful path for us, or is there more on offer that I'm not looking to?
Yeah. Right. And what I've seen is that that's really an observational process. We can just observe. If we're pointed in this direction, exposed to what you're sharing, we can look for ourselves. Okay, is it true? Oh, yeah. These thoughts, these stressful thoughts, I feel the stress emotionally. I feel my body tighten. And okay, that's true. And if I, open to something else, to a quieter space, or just notice it naturally calms down on its own. Oh, look, I feel a little more relaxed and my pain is somewhat less. So it's, I don't think we're asking people to take this on faith here. We're like saying, hey, look for yourself, which is ultimately the power of it, because it's actually what's happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think too, David, I appreciate
Yeah.
you pointing that out, because I mean, I think really in a very, very simple way,
Yeah.
very, very simple way, we've all experienced this our whole lives,
Right.
right? When we get scared about
Yeah.
something, we feel our body shifts. It changes, the muscle tension changes, the way that we carry ourselves changes. When we're feeling in a low mood, the way we hold our posture changes. When we're in a higher mood, the way our posture changes. I mean, it is all just one thing,
Right.
right? Just one thing. And
Yeah.
so it's not necessarily about, getting out of pain or changing health as much as it is just look at the fact that it has always been true.
Right.
It's always been true. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's true moment to moment. One thing that has helped me around understanding pain, let's say physical pain, is that the experience really is moment to moment. It's not solid. It's our mind creates this idea of pain, and that thought by itself gives us an experience of something that's real and solid, and appears like it has no breaks.
Yeah.
But the more we soften around all of these ideas, even the language, sometimes I find it helpful in myself or with a client, because I have my own coaching practice, to use different language, see what works language-wise. Maybe it's sensation, just notice how it shifts, because what I've seen in a given moment, there's always an opportunity to soften my thinking, which is also a kind of a softening of the body. And just that could take even just the edge off the physical sensation or pain, which is encouraging. We're not a victim. I mean, that's, to me, one of the key themes in this whole field of the principles and this understanding, is that we're not a victim. Experience comes from within us. And that's where we come back to the possibilities, and not just the possibilities for the future, because a lot of us understand that things can shift, open up, but the possibility is right now. Like right now, even as you're listening to this or watching this show, it's like, can you notice how you feel in this moment? Any tension, any straining, and could you ease that? Could you be open? Just be more curious.
Yeah, that's right. And you're absolutely right. We use language in a way. We oftentimes use language innocently against ourselves.
Yeah.
Pain is a thought generated word pointing to something. But what I heard you pointing at was this idea that pain is this thing, this solid, immovable thing. But what's really true is that if we peel back the label, what we realize is that pain is pointing to a process, an ever-changing process. It is always shifting and moving and shifting and moving and shifting and moving. And if we lose our appreciation for that, for the fact that it is shifting and moving, we will get locked on the pain, the word itself, the experience of itself, and that is where we have put our feet hard in the ground and are no longer moving with the current of life, no longer moving with the current of the intelligence behind life. But it's not that we're not going to have pain. It's an experience that is designed for the human experience, and it's not about not having pain.
Right.
It's about realizing what's actually true about pain, is that it is a changing and moving and shifting process, not a static state. And what's true about that, David, is that is what's absolutely true behind all of our experiences. Every label, everything that you can come up with around health, any sort of diagnoses, the diagnosis is it's a word, it's a thought created word that's pointing to something. But what it's pointing to is a process. it's not the thing itself. It's pointing to a ever shifting and changing process. And that's where the possibility is. It's in the shifting and changing process.
Exactly. In that process. Now, at another level, part of the principles, aside from how this is all shifting and changing, and that thought is really at cause, thinking in the moment, creating our experience on multiple levels. We also have this the principle of kind of an intelligence that's embedded in the universe, in us, in nature. It's called the principle of mind. But this intelligence that's built into us that is behind how life working and functioning. And I'm wondering how you see this intelligence working in the healing process, and particularly how pain might actually have intelligence behind it.
Yeah.
Specifically.
Yeah. I think in my experience, the intelligence is intelligence.
Yeah.
It's not like sometimes it's not intelligent. Like if what we're looking at is that there is intelligence behind everything. If that's what we're really, if we're looking at the fact of intelligence, then the question then becomes, where is the intelligence behind my current experience? And what is the intelligence inviting me to? What is it inviting me to see? What is it inviting me to hear? What is it inviting me to experience in this moment, beyond the ideas that I'm generating about it? The ideas that we generate around it generally revolve around the personal, right? What am I supposed to do now? How can I get better? This is interrupting my lifestyle. It's interrupting, my ability to go play, so on and so forth. It gets very, very, very personal.
Yeah.
The fact is that intelligence isn't personal at all. Intelligence is just, it's there to help us. It's there for the expansion of consciousness, period. That's it. There's intelligence behind life for the expansion of consciousness. And so if we can see the fact that the intelligence somehow has my back, but for my thinking about it,
right,
but for my expectations and judgment and the ways that I think that intelligence needs to show up for me, if we can see beyond the personal side of that, what we can open up to is the fact that there is a way in which the intelligence can have our back if we're willing to listen deeply and look into the unknown, into the silence behind our personal experience in this moment, and see, is there something that it's inviting me to? Is there something that it's inviting me to see? And as that invitation is accepted from the intelligence, we have more of an opportunity to move with the life force that's behind our experience, rather than innocently resisting it.
Yes, exactly. Beautiful. I feel like we've kind of laid out a broad background for this topic and our experience and how ways to work with it, the intelligence supporting us. There's a particular example that you and I have spoken about that raises questions. I don't know. I haven't quite heard really clear answers to. I don't know the answer. I have some ideas that I'd like to raise now in terms of health and the principles. So when you and I spoke last summer, you mentioned that a factor in that's common. It can happen for people in today's world, is that their gut can be in an imbalanced state in terms of the balance of bacteria, um, healthy bacteria, and so forth, and that's generally known as dysbiosis. That's the term for it. I know this is very common with our modern lifestyles now. And I've been aware of this. I think in recent years there's been a lot of science showing how the relationships between the gut and the brain and feelings and sense of stress. And you mentioned that um, uh, an intestinal state which is out of balance can generalize a signal to the body that something's off, and that we may not understand what that means and kind of have this internal sense of threat. And from that, lots of basically the system can generate anxiety, kind of this insecurity, and that this is a factor that you wanted to add in addition to the stress that we experience from our thinking directly. That if we have this physiological imbalance, this could generate a lot of extra stressful thinking that then we can, yes, go to the principles to get perspective on.
Yeah.
But that a more effective way could be to address the physiological imbalance to reduce this sort of stressful thinking, as well as point somebody towards the principles to sort of reduce the stressful thinking just from misunderstanding. So that's kind of a topic which I find fascinating, and I want to start with on a level of seeing what's happening. In the principles, we say that our experience comes 100% from our thinking in the moment. This sort of anxiety or that you point to as being generated from this physiological imbalance, do you see this as something other than, this coming from something other than thought in the moment? Like, is it coming from the body, so to speak?
I don't see it. I don't see it really in conflict with what we're pointing at all. I think it's kind of, for me, it's kind of an intriguing place to look. So first of all, I think it's really important to kind of recognize that when we're talking about the formless intelligence behind life, and we're talking about the form of the body and physical health, there is no difference. It is the same. The formless and the form are the same, but what we have a tendency to do in our human brain is to kind of separate them. We say, okay, this formless intelligence, I can't see it, feel it, touch it, but it's there. And this body I can see, feel, and touch, so it must be more real. But if we kind of go back to this idea, this understanding of the intelligence behind life, the intelligence behind life is ever flowing and inviting us to see something more for ourselves, so our own experience of consciousness can expand. Right? Now, that being said, the way I see it right now in my own personal experience and work is that when we look at how thought is experienced through our body, through our mind, it's oftentimes said in the principal community that we're feeling our thinking moment to moment.
Right.
And so the question then becomes, well, if I'm feeling my thinking, then should I change my thinking? And it seems like a logical place to look, but I think what's even deeper than that is there is pure possibility in thought moment to moment that's available to us. Okay. Now, humans have the gift of memory. Humans have the gift of pattern making. And our brain is designed that way. Our brain is designed to create patterns and hold memory for the purpose of survival, right? And so we oftentimes neglect to see that sometimes we'll create a pattern out of something so that we can be more responsive to it next time it happens, so that we can actually survive the experience. It's very primitive, but that's how we got to the point of evolving to this state, is that part of our brain that does that work for us. And we want to be thankful for that and appreciative, because it's done a wonderful job. In the role of thriving and feeling a higher sense of well-being, it doesn't do that part of our brain doesn't do a wonderful job. Because that part of our brain tends to see life more as a threat to safety and security, right? It tends to see things as, am I okay? Am I going to be okay? And all of a sudden we either feel hopeless, or we feel anxious, or we feel fearful, or we feel worried, and it's being driven by this part of the brain from this memory center and from this pattern making that we do. So here's what I think is really fascinating, is that if we look at, there's so much fantastic research that's been done in the recent years around this microbiome and the fact that we are mostly bacteria. And for years, people have been talking about gut health and gut bacteria, but it hasn't been until just the recent last few years where people have really started to understand that, oh my gosh, man, this thing is far bigger than we ever thought. This bacteria outnumbers our cells 10 to 1. And they play a huge role in the physical health of the body. And what people are also beginning to see is this brain-gut connection, the brain-gut, gut-brain connection. And the way that I started to see it was that one of the biggest challenges in physical health today, in our modern age, is inflammation. If we look just briefly, what creates inflammation in the body? Well, stressful thinking creates inflammation in the body. Excess worry creates inflammation in the body. Excess fearful thinking, not being able to go from a fear state into a clarity state, constantly being in a fear state creates inflammation in the body. Now, if we look at food and nutrition, the fact that we are, a lot of us live on food that has been highly processed. The distance between nature and where it shows up on our shelves is a vast chasm, right? And so we're moving away from getting fresh, vital foods into our body day to day, moment to moment. And then if we look at the environmental factors, the fact that our air is not as clean to breathe, that we're exposed to more chemicals and pollutants than ever before in history. You put all of these factors together and it puts the human body in an inflamed state. And what research has started to show us is that inflammation in the body will eventually show up in the brain. Okay? And there's another component that you were pointing to, and that is that, our gut is really like, although it's internal, it actually has access to the outside world. When we put food in our mouth, it immediately interacts with our gut. And so the gut is interacting with the outside world moment to moment. And so it puts it into a very vulnerable position of inflammation. And it puts it in a vulnerable position of influencing this microbiome that has a balance between beneficial bacteria and bacteria that is also beneficial but has to hold the right ratio, right? Now, when this begins to shift and we begin to have more inflammation in our gut system, what tends to happen is that inflammation, kind of like heat, flows upward, right? And so it's oftentimes said in the medical, in the health world and medical community that a gut on fire creates a brain on fire. Now, when we have inflammation, excess inflammation in the body that's not being able to be extinguished, and it begins to overwhelm our brain, the part of our brain that gets activated is the part of our brain that sees life as a threat. And so all of a sudden, now our worry center, our fear center, our memories, our patterns around survival begin to kind of show up on our lens, right? So if we see the world, if the only thing that we're experiencing is thought in the moment, it's like wearing a lens over our eyes. And if what's showing up, if what is being stimulated through the brain is those memory centers, then what comes up are thought patterns that scare us. And so when something scares us to the level where we're feeling it in a physical way, in the way of like anxiety, for example, or even depression, what begins to happen is it looks so real. It feels so real. And because the lens that we're wearing over our eyeballs are looking for evidence in the world of form for why it's real, we begin to create a really compelling dialogue and narrative for ourselves. And so what I have found is that sometimes if I'm sitting with somebody and I find, wow, you know what? This person seems to have a very, their physical body seems to be very inflamed. They have a very kind of inflammatory type of lifestyle, for example. I started to get curious about what would happen if we began to kind of help the body extinguish some of that inflammation. Would we be able to have a deeper, more impactful conversation looking in the direction of the principles if we were able to calm down that inflammation, thereby calming down that part of their brain? And what I started to see was, yeah, that's actually true. People came in calmer states after working with some aspects of their nutrition to help decrease inflammation and to help kind of rebuild and reorganize that microbiome in the gut. So it's a two-way street, right? You know, when we live in a state of fear and over busy-mindedness, it creates a physiological state in our body that is less optimal for that microbiome to thrive. And because we don't oftentimes, when we get in these states, we oftentimes we feel like we're stuck in them. It doesn't give that opportunity for the microbiome to get a break and to replenish and rebuild itself. And then the other way, when we have this microbiome and this level of inflammation that is generally working at a higher level, it tends to fire up that part of our brain that sees life more as a threat to our safety and security. So all of a sudden we have this two-way traffic that isn't giving us a break moment to moment. And we tend to find more and more evidence for the narrative that we're creating from that lower state of mind. And then we start to feel the experience of being stuck. But are we really stuck? Or are we really just in an inflamed state where we're not giving ourselves the opportunity to see what intelligence is inviting us to?
Yes, yes. I really appreciate how you just painted a very broad picture of the interaction between these different systems in the body with the bacteria and the inflammation, and also the brain. Um, Begins to move towards a sense of wholeness of how it all works together,
Yeah.
which I think can be very helpful for us to come to feel and to get that sense of connectedness,
Yeah.
um, and in a way that then can allow the system to quiet down. Uh, uh, the um, the question that I still have in my mind, maybe now it would be clearer to pose it now that you laid out the terrain. Let's start with the inflammation activating the brain center, which generate narratives around safety and survival and thereby generating fear. Sometimes I'm aware of that personally, and so to make this concrete for me, sometimes I thought, okay, I'm aware my gut is not in great shape right now, and so in a given moment, I'm feeling this sense of unease and discomfort. It starts to look like it's something other than thought in the moment, in the sense of often as in the principles world, the way I hear we talk about thought,
Mhm.
it's like conscious thought. And now we talk about unconscious thought too, but and the beautiful thing about thought in the moment in the principles world that helped touched me is that it's so transient. It's not substantial. Nothing solid about thought. It can dissolve in a moment. Like Sydney Banks, who originally found and elucidated these principles, said, our well-being is just one thought away.
Mhm.
Or another way of putting it, one releasing of a stressful thought away to that natural state. So that's a tremendous, to me, freedom of the principles, and that sense of relief is available. Um, when I start to think about there being a physical state, like a state of my brain, that a sort of neurochemical, perhaps electrical state, which is generating insecurity and fear, that starts to feel like something more persistent than just a thought coming up in the moment.
Mhm.
And that is not as amenable to a shift in this moment. It starts to look like, okay, it is amenable to shifting, but it's a more of a process through time. Like, okay, starting to shift my nutrition,
Mm.
or at a very simple level. And yeah, if I eat more foods closer to nature, like you pointed out, over time, my system will come more to balance, less inflammation, less activation of the survival part of the brain. That's
Mhm.
wonderful, and it's great to know about. And there is the sense again that this is a process through time. And so I lose that sense of the immediacy of possibility of well-being
Yeah.
right now.
Well, here's the thing, David. It doesn't mean that, you know, uh, it doesn't just because the lens that we're looking through in that moment has really got kind of our hairs up. It doesn't mean that we can't also have a new thought of perspective that shifts our consciousness in that moment of time, right? It, because the world of form and the world of the formless is just possibility, right? What tends to keep us in this feeling of being stuck is being convinced that the experience we're having is absolutely capital T true, right? But the experience that we're having although it looks true, it feels true. And when I'm saying experience, I want to be clear that what we're talking about is what we're experiencing in the physical body. This is not like what we're seeing in the outside world, right? What we're experiencing in the physical body is being thought generated in that moment of time. And just because that part of our brain and a level of inflammation is currently going on in the body, that doesn't exclude us from the possibility of having new, fresh thinking in any given moment of time. You know, it's kind of like if you're looking through lenses, if you've got goggles on and these goggles are really scratched and you can't see clearly through them, it doesn't mean that you can't suddenly see something that you didn't see before.
Even through those goggles that are scratched.
Through those same goggles.
Exactly.
You can still, you know, when we hold the understanding of the intelligence behind life, when we hold that as possibility for ourselves, it gives us an opportunity to see something for ourselves that we couldn't see if we were convinced that the scratches on the goggles is all I got, it's the best I can do, and it's painting my future, right? The scratches in the goggles is just where my attention is right now. That's all it is. But between the scratches is clarity. Between the scratches is where we have the greatest realm of openness and possibility for us. So do we want to put our attention on the scratch, or do we have this understanding that it's between the scratches, where we can see something that we didn't see before?
Yes. And so what I'm hearing from you, back to talking specifically about inflammation in the brain, the survival center getting activated. What I think I'm hearing from you is that even if that's happening in a given moment, the survival center is activated and saying, whoa, danger, and that's happening physiologically. Even then, that's like the scratches in the goggle. Even then, there's a possibility to see, in a moment, to see between the scratches, and in a moment to come back to the well-being, which is our natural state, even with that physiological process happening.
That's right. That's right. Because here's the thing, and I'm chuckling because I'm glad you pointed that out, because if that weren't true,
right,
then what it would mean is that people would have to be this unbelievably clean vessel, that they would have to be living off the cleanest food, and that only the people who are eating the cleanest food and living the most pristine lives would have the opportunity to have a shift in their consciousness and awareness. Well, that is just not true. Consciousness doesn't care. Consciousness isn't personal, and consciousness isn't judging. All we're saying is that if our experience of thought moves through these lenses of the physical brain and we project them out into the world, all we're saying is that if there's more inflammation in the body, then our attention is generally going to be on things that scare us rather than things that inspire and illuminate for us. But because we are nothing but consciousness, and consciousness is behind our life, and because it's impersonal, there is no prescription in life that we have to abide to in order to have a shift in consciousness.
Yes. Beautiful. I think this is a key point, and really cuts to, what I wanted to explore today, because it's just fascinating, the interaction. So you're saying on one level, maybe what you understand is levels. On one level, yes, inflammation and kick out these survival scenarios, tend to draw our attention to that level, yet we're not stuck with that. We're not determined by it. We are free to experience well-being even while it's happening.
Yeah.
And at the same time, what I'm sensing is that wisdom, as we call it, this intelligence that's built into life and to us, can guide us to realize, like, oh, the body is at a balance here. And if we're educated about nutrition and inflammation, this could be a sign,
Yeah.
like the intelligence behind the discomfort.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, this feels, well, okay, I'm inflamed, and some of it's from the body. There's a way in which I think we could respond. So I guess there's two ways to respond to that. One way is to get upset about it and go, and kind of feel stuck, a victim of it. That's where I was coming from initially. Oh,
Yeah.
inflamed. I feel crappy. I'm going to continue to feel crappy. My well-being is days away until I clean up my diet. That's depressing. But the other side is to say, would be to just ignore the body and say, well, it's all just our thinking in the moment. And that's awesome. But yet somehow that's not the whole of human experience,
Right.
where there's a wholeness to the different levels, all connected, and sort of a balanced, wise, understanding that appeals, it comes to me now is more noticing the body, okay, noticing it, how it feels, realizing I'm okay even right now, a sense of contacting that well-being, even with, it's like contacting well-being when we're tired. Is that possible? Yeah.
Yeah.
But then I'm still noticing, okay, it'd be good to take a nap or go to bed or eat more closer to nature. But I think that's the possibility here, to kind of really have an expanded vision that holds it in a way that serves us, doesn't sort of bring us back deeper into the muck.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like the physical body it's almost kind of like it's almost kind of like the mailbox for the invitation that we're getting from consciousness.
Mm.
Right? It's like this thing where whatever we're experiencing from a place of curiosity, we can just begin to wonder, what is consciousness inviting me to? And opening that up to see, where am I guided? Am I guided to go work with somebody? Am I guided to go see somebody who can help me with nutrition? Am I guided to having a conversation with somebody who can help me open up? Am I guided to go spend more time in nature? Am I, that's all it is it's just a moment to moment invitation. And it just turns out that because the human body and its connection and sense to the world is so heightened that it tends to get our attention. So it turns out it's a wonderful mailbox for consciousness to put an invitation.
Yeah. Yeah, and that invitation could contain multiple. That letter could contain multiple invitations. Like it could also be the invitation. The moment is just to, whoa, I'm stressing myself out about all of this, and let's just, I think I want to come back to one of the most beautiful results of, I think, understanding the principles is to really get that we're okay in this moment, no matter what, unconditionally.
Yeah.
Even if our body was inflamed to the max, we still can find this okayness.
Yeah, that's right.
This is something, because there are a lot of people in the world of integrative health who are talking about inflammation and gut stuff, but this is, I think, a very helpful foundation. I'm okay right now.
Yeah.
And knowing that almost begins to take some of the scratches out. of the lens right there. And then, okay, is it nature, a walk, go to sleep, eat
Yeah.
better? You're right.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I love that, David. I think, what you and I are pointing at here is it's not about passivity in any way,
Right.
right? And to your point, what we're also pointing is the fact that we're okay no matter what.
Yeah.
Whatever our physical body is experiencing, behind that, there's a place of well-being and okayness, no matter what our physical body is experiencing. And to your point, being able to kind of look in that direction can allow us to relax into the physical experience we're having, that can allow us to see something that we couldn't have seen otherwise.
On any level, it could be the level of some internal psychological insight, or it could be something very practical like
That's exactly
time
right.
for a nap.
That's exactly right.
Right.
That's exactly right. Because it's all the same.
Yeah.
It's all the same. A nap, an invitation for a nap, is no different than an invitation to how to take a medication. It's it's
Right.
all the same. It's all in uh, the expression of well-being. It's all in the expression of the intelligence coming through in that moment of time.
Yes. And it could be eating some vegetables or any of the things you mentioned, the whole range,
Right.
or just letting go of a thought in this moment. It's all that
The
intelligence.
judgment that I may have about eating a chocolate bar.
That piece too, that level too.
That level, it's not exclusive of any level.
No, all levels. Yeah.
It's right. It's
Yeah.
not about being a good boy or a good
Yes.
girl. Right.
Yeah.
It's about being free in your mind, and then
Yes.
seeing how the intelligence uh, can guide you if we're willing to listen and respond and listen.
Yeah.
Look, you know what? Oftentimes we get an invitation and we don't take it.
Well, that's true too. But
But
we,
but it doesn't care. It
right,
doesn't say, "Oh no, David's been bad.
right,
Take my last invitation and hold a grudge." It just,
right.
all right, send another one out.
Exactly.
Another one out.
Yep. They keep coming. We always get another invitation every moment.
That's right.
That's true. So we're back to those open possibilities. It's
That's right.
always fresh and available.
Yeah.
Beautiful. So, wow, we painted a really broad, open picture here of how this can work and the intelligence and what's available. I feel lighter about the topic now that we've explored this.
Awesome.
And I'd like to give the audience an opportunity to learn how to connect more with you, with your work, and your offerings, whatever you can say might be
Yeah.
helpful right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for that, David. Yeah. Um, you can visit my website. It's scottkellycoaching.com.
Okay.
And explore some of the offerings that I have there, from doing work in a one-on-one forum to doing virtual work, online courses, to retreats that I offer, from small group to larger group to excursion immersions that I call them, where we kind of decide to take an adventure out into nature in some way, and we explore this understanding from how nature is pointing to this in a way that is so helpful and is impersonal. And so there's lots of ways that we can explore together, and that's scottkellycoaching.com.
Wonderful. Great. I love how, as you just mentioned in your work, there are multiple ways that you can reach people, assist them. It's almost like different avenues, different languages. There's the language of nature, there's the language of speaking, individual, group, different ways that we can get touched because the message is all over, right?
That's right.
Those invitations and these letters are coming in many forms,
That's
always. Yeah,
always coming in.
yeah,
Yeah.
great. Beautiful. On that note, Scott, thank you. I really appreciate sharing this so wide and deep and open with you today.
Yeah, awesome, David. I appreciate the invitation, and it's always a joy to sit down and have a great conversation with you. So thank you.
My pleasure. Okay. Bye, everybody, for now. Be in touch.